Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Braden Martin and I will be presenting on creative influence and public relations. Now, ever since I was a kid, I've been fascinated with creativity. My first love was actually Legos. I was first given my first tub of Legos with an assortment of bricks, all shapes and sizes. I loved that you could create whatever you wanted. I would spend hours and hours in my room alone building these architectural masterpieces, as I would call them. Anything from anything from mansions to submarines to tree houses, you name it, the options were endless as long as my creativity was endless. Next, I was first given a Lego set, and I remember it pretty vividly. My parents gave it to me for my birthday, and I opened it up, and in my hands I was holding Luke Skywalker and the X-Wing fighter that took down the entire Empire and the Death Star. It was amazing. I didn't bother with any of the other presents. I just went immediately to that one, spent the next 30 or so minutes spending time working on that and in wonderment and problem solving, reading all the directions because sometimes they're confusing, sometimes the pieces don't look like what they do. And so I built that in about 30 minutes. And these sets would then be the result of a lack of financial wealth in my early years. So I just loved it. And one day I was looking on YouTube on my mom's computer with Lego videos, and I stumbled upon this new idea and this new medium that would be my new love. And I stumbled upon stop motion videos. It kind of went hand in hand with Legos. I started to use these Legos to make these stop motion videos, and it was really fun, but it was really tedious. I don't know if any of you have tried it before, but it's just kind of like you have a camera here. I was using my dad's old camcorder. It wasn't even a picture like a photo camera. It was like short videos, so like it didn't even work well. But you'd stand here, you'd take a picture, you'd go down, you'd move each individual piece, go back, and I would just do that for hours. I was convinced that I was going to be making feature-length films, posting them on YouTube, getting millions of views, maybe even a few Oscar nominations. That never happened. I did post one to YouTube. If you want to see it, I can show you at a later time. It's pretty bad. It's not good. But this fascination with stop motion and kind of frame by frame transitioned me into animation, and I really grew a love for animation. And it was partnered kind of with Pixar Animation Studios, and that company has been, and some of the leaders in the company have been the source of some of my inspiration as I've gone through my academic career. And moving from animation, I went something a little bit different that some of you might know, some of you might not know. I began to have a fascination with parkour or free running. For those of you who don't know, that's kind of the middle picture right there, is someone doing parkour or free running. I would describe it as the creativity of motion, and the whole idea behind it is getting from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. So whether that's up a wall, across a gap, you don't want to go around it, you just go over it. And this fluid motion carries you through, and I thought it was really interesting. I tried it here and there, but I was no good because I wasn't bold enough to try any of these really hard things. But then I went back to computers and started a fascination with graphic design and growing in that, and learned Adobe Illustrator and some of the Creative Cloud suite, and really enjoyed that. And really all of these things have influenced me as I've grown up, and influenced the way that I think, the way that I problem solve, and have really ultimately brought me to what I'm studying, what my profession is today, and public relations and creative influence. So first, before I move forward, let me define creative influence for you. It's the use of out-of-the-box thinking, original ideas, and new and existing mediums to result in a singular or multitude of outcomes. The idea of this is taking a process that you know to be true and to be effective already and pushing it to its limit and pushing it to its breaking point. The idea of creative influence hasn't even been or it has been around for a very long time, just not really underneath a term. And we see it in the heart of every form of communication that we have from the beginning of time. So I'll start with that. In the very beginning, God spoke and he said, "Let there be light." The first form of creative influence was storytelling, oral storytelling. This is how people would learn. This is how people would tell stories. They would share experiences, and it was all through oral storytelling. Now, next came writing or print, and oral storytelling and print would be kind of dominating the creative influence sphere or industry for the next several millennia. And really until the printing press came along, nothing really changed too much, but the idea of being able to mass produce something and get information to a mass amount of people really changed the game. And after the printing press and newspapers, it moved into radio. And radio is really interesting because it pushed creative influencers to not only or they wouldn't be able to use visuals, so they only could use audios, and they had to capture audiences only using their ears. And this actually led to some crazy things like the entire nation thinking that there was going to be a war of the worlds because there was a radio broadcast from scripted from Orson Welles, and it brought some panic among America because of the realistic and creativity of the broadcast. And this was kind of groundbreaking because it allowed messages to be traveled from across the nation and across America. And over time, as technological advances happened, this transferred into broadcast video or broadcast TV. And messages and videos could be now received and sent from across the nation. And now we are living in an age that is dominated by photography and video, and not just through broadcast means, but through social media and the internet. And it's really expanded the individual's reach beyond what we thought was even possible. So why is creativity and creative influence so effective? There's actually some science behind it, believe it or not. Our brains are made up of 3 different networks. There's the default network, the executive network, and the salience network. Studies done by Grant Brenner, MD, have shown that the creative process and creativity actually link all 3 of these networks together. They're normally different functions of problem solving. And so creativity actually creates teamwork and problem solving within your own brain, within itself, which is really interesting to me. Some people say that creativity is genetic. Some people say that creativity is like a muscle. You have to flex it and you have to work it and strengthen it over time. But I think it's a little bit of both. Additional studies have proven, additional studies by Yale and Harvard have proven that if you are witnessing someone else's creative efforts, your creativity and problem solving is actually heightened and inspired in that moment in your brain. So this means that there's an actual chemical reaction and process and response happening in your brain when you're seeing or witnessing or experiencing someone else's creative product. And I think this is by design. We are created by a creative God. He has created each and every one of us with unique traits, unique problem-solving ways of thinking, and our capacity as humans to create and be creative goes far beyond any other creature that God has created. So, now how does this connect to the field of public relations, you may ask? I'm getting to it. Public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships for organizations and its publics. In a crowded, globalized world, it is becoming increasingly harder to make a genuine and lasting impression for publics. And this isn't even the most difficult task. In a study done by Microsoft, the first thing that we have to break through is to reach someone's attention. Their study shows that the average person's attention span is a mere 8 seconds. 8 seconds. I think that was about 8 seconds. That's how long your attention span is. This number has actually dropped since the year 2000. It's dropped from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. And to add insult to injury, goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds. So we aren't even up there. So how then do we meet the need, the 8-second demands of our audience? I've identified 3 trends in today's market that can help public relations professionals boost the creative influence of their organizations. The first is social media. It's still it seems like it's a pretty established means of communication, but it's still pretty up and coming. It's only become normalized and mainstream in the last 10 years, and so it's still on its upswing as far as the use of it goes. We see brands use social media very strongly, like Wendy's, IHOP, and Southwest. The next trend is video. Video has been proven to be 2 times more effective than photo nowadays. And it actually will engage an audience for about 20 to 30 seconds as opposed to that 8-second attention span that most people have. The last thing is augmented reality and virtual reality. These things are very, very early on the start for technology's sake, but companies like Google, Snapchat, and Instagram are still using VR and AR. Specifically, AR has been very common, but VR experiences have been growing as well, and brands are going to be able to be using this for reaching their publics. So, creative influence and public relations, what does this mean for us? They are very tightly related. I believe that creative influence is the heart of public relations, and it is really what drives public relations. And us as public relations professionals, we need to be at the forefront of this creative influence idea, because we are going to be those people who are going to be in those organizations and in those companies trying to influence people. And the more we can do it through creativity, the more effective it's going to be. Thank you.